I'm just so excited to see so many familiar and so many new faces for this time together to map what's going on in our region. I will pass the mic to Felix and Jeff.
Hello, everybody. I want to start us off with a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge the Piscataway people as original caretakers of this unceded land in what is now called Washington, D.C. Land back movements are a part of the Solidarity Economy movement, returning Indigenous land to Indigenous people. The Solidarity Economy movement is international and focused on building people power throughout the world. We also acknowledge the Palestinian struggle for freedom against Israeli occupation and apartheid.
I want to invite us to enter a moment of silence as we come together and hold space for the liberation of a free Palestine. Okay, let's move on. Thank you for that, everyone. I appreciate you.
Hi again, everyone. So my name is Bianca Vazquez. I'm the program director at Beloved Community Incubator. And we are a regional solidarity economy movement organization here in the DMV, which means we do most of our organizing in DC and the surrounding suburbs. And we build the solidarity economy in our region through worker justice campaigns, through cooperative development and lending, and also technical assistance to cooperatives in our region and mutual aid. So largely, what's the solidarity economy? The solidarity economy is thinking about how our economy is structured in a way that puts people over profit, and that doesn't have extraction and maximum profit as the center. And these are things that we know about the economy not working for folks because we see inequality on the rise. We see displacement and gentrification. And so lots of folks are looking for alternatives to say, how could we structure our economy differently? And so our work here at BCI is looking at how do we build democratic ownership of the resources that we need to live and also of our local institutions. So thinking about community and democratically owned land, businesses, grocery stores, means of education, utilities, all sorts of ways that there can be community ownership and control over resources. And so we were part of a webinar by Nonprofit Quarterly a few weeks ago that invited organizers and leaders from Buffalo and New Orleans and Los Angeles to talk about how are they building and supporting and cultivating regional solidarity economy where they are. And we decided it would be worth having a local version of that to talk about how are we at BCI, but really the bigger we, the collective we, building and cultivating the solidarity economy in our region, because this is not the work of one person. This is not the work of one organization. This is really like work that we get to do together, because the system we're trying to replace, which is, extractive and racialized capitalism, was built over centuries. And we are up against big myths, as Ed Whitfield says, that capitalism is normal and inevitable. And so to structure our economy in a different way is a big task. We are up to something big together. So we're going to walk you through, just to share what we're going to be engaging this afternoon, is we're going to be engaging a framework for how do you look at your ecosystem, and we're going to do that together. But we at BCI started to look at our ecosystem. And we asked, what's missing here? What's preventing the growth of cooperatives? And we identified that there was wasn't enough co-op developers that are from our local communities and that know how to work with workers that might have barriers to traditional employment or barriers to being in the formal economy or barriers to traditional ownership. And so this year we are running a Solidarity Economy Apprentice program, and we are training up 5 local developers. And so we thought, who better to share about why the solidarity economy than the folks who are trying to build it in their own communities, and we at BCI are trying to support them. And to me, the beauty of the solidarity economy is we can all come to it from different places. We all get to come to it from who we are and what we're trying to build in our communities. So I would love to, on order of my screen, Damien, Charnel, Miriam, Sierra, and Kristen, to get to share about why the solidarity economy for you. And y'all, I want you like in advance to give them the little round of applause. It's a big deal to share in this way. And also we're so excited to be partnering with them. Damien, I will invite you first to share why the solidarity economy for you.
Well, thank you so much, Bianca. And it's such a privilege to be a part of this cohort with the rest of the individuals and the team that's training us. Felice and Jeff, thank you all. It's just, I think it's something that I've been living with for a while. And it's really great to see Jim on the call today. And just in our community, it's something that I look at what we're doing collectively in this cohort. It's something that is generations before me have been doing in this community. This is the way that we have been establishing democratic processes that are sustainable, from looking at the redevelopment of America after slavery, looking at how we was able to build community economics for ourselves through mutual aid, being some of the first cooperative developments, reading the book Jessica Gordon Menhart, which really kind of took me to the conscious understanding of what cooperatives can do for us, just took me to another level. Now with the training and education that we are receiving in this course, it just like the political education it's just so many different things I would say that drives me who I am that I can kind of speak to in just one quick second. And just recognizing the other individuals in our community that have done that, like Community Forklift and sustaining and creating sustainable activities and visions that it's a sacrifice only for a season. And then you leave it with a community. If this is something that we're just not building for ourselves, where capitalistic systems kind of really just kind of focuses on that individual model in the United States, but building something that is socially sustainable. And thank you all. Thank you so much. So I'm really excited to be here today. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Damien. And so cool to see all the ways in which there are connections across this call and relationships. Charnel, can I pass the mic to you?
Yes. Hey, y'all. Good morning. So why the solidarity economy for me is, I feel like if we want to see, all of our communities move from surviving to thriving, then the solidarity is the way to go. That whole top-down model, it just really doesn't work. And like, even for me as a business owner and wanting to convert my business, knowing that everybody want to build legacy, and as they should want to, like, they should want to be able to leave something, for their family to be able to, and we should be able to plan for generations and not just like, month to month or year to year. So us coming together to build a solid economy or a solidarity economy, it just makes more sense. And it just, and again, like I was saying, like as far as like wanting to convert, like if people don't feel a sense of ownership, then they don't really take the business as serious as they would in feeling a sense of ownership. So for me, solidarity economy is just the way to go because, you know, solidarity, not charity. And that's like my spiel.
Love it. And thank you, Chanel. And Chanel did a great job of pointing out that converting businesses that exist is a strategy that's at our disposal for more worker ownership, community wealth building. And that's a really like exciting possibility. I would love to pass to Miriam.
Hola a todos. Hoy preferí hablar en español, que es mucho mejor para mí. Bueno, para mí economía solidaria significa trabajar todos en unión para poder prosperar juntos en armonía y para futuro visualizar juntos un país diferente o una comunidad diferente. Eh, Para mí, realmente, yo inicié mi negocio hace muchos años. Tenía la idea de hacerlo junto con 4 personas, pero lastimosamente, pues estas personas no quisieron trabajar junto conmigo, ¿verdad? Entonces, esto se hizo un poco difícil para mí y bueno, tomé la decisión de hacer mi propio negocio, pero lastimosamente trabajar juntos, a trabajar sola es imposible porque hay muchos proyectos y cosas del negocio que es difícil manejarlo por uno mismo. Las finanzas, contabilidad, marketing, es todo un proceso que es difícil manejarlo. Entonces, sí o sí necesitamos la ayuda de alguien que esté a nuestro lado, que sea una pareja, un partner que trabaje junto con nosotros o una comunidad completa para trabajar si queremos realmente crecer. Am, bueno, eso es lo que yo quiero compartir hoy. Siento que las cooperativas definitivamente hacen el crecimiento de toda una comunidad.
Thank you, Miriam. So I'm just going to translate that for folks who need it. So Miriam said, hi, everyone. My name is Miriam. I'm going to speak in Spanish because for me, that is just much better. So for me, the solidarity economy means working together, prospering together to build a different kind of country and a different kind of community. Many years ago, I started my own business. And I had the idea of doing it with other people and made the decision to do it with other people. And sadly, that didn't work out. But actually, doing your business alone is also impossible. There's so many aspects and projects to a business, the marketing, the accounting, the finances. We all need a partner and we need people by our sides in order to do that. And we all need community to grow. So that's what I would like to share. Thanks, Miriam. I'll pass over to Sierra and then to Kristen.
There's Sierra here. I am excited about the idea of solidarity economies because I'm interested in transforming society. And I think that if we can orient like all kind of parts of as many aspects of society toward our own liberation as possible, we'll get there. We can get there. Whether that be across our businesses, across our movements, and our communities, kind of stitching together the fabric there. But yeah, just excited to be a part of that with y'all.
Thanks so much, Sierra. And also I'll pass the mic to Kristen.
Awesome, thank you. I too also extend my gratitude to being part of this. I feel really inspired by the conversation already. My answer to this question will change frequently and has over time. I think right now, since we've been doing so much training with Seed Commons, what I have really fallen in love with is needing to show that capitalism isn't the inevitable and only way, and that they talk about how we need evidence proof that that's not so. And so I find it really important to tangibly be able to say we can do something different. And for me, cooperatives and the solidarity economy is one way to tangibly show that we can do something different, not just in the theory, but in tangible shifting of people's lives. And then at the personal level, I spent all of my 20s and into my 30s doing movement and social justice work, and then found myself in a space of crisis financially, and really trying to figure out like how to deal with student debt, how to deal with a lot of different things, and was in this like crossroads of like, what do I do? And so opening my own business became an idea moving forward. And at the time, I didn't know a lot about how I too could also build a cooperative business in which I can benefit and it can also move justice in the world and in my community. And so those are the two, like self-interest, like how can we all actually have our needs met in a way that's not extractive and like puts one person above the other or one community above another. But really that the evidence proof that we can do something different is why I'm really attracted to the solidarity economy and particularly cooperatives.
Okay, so I don't know about y'all, but I know these folks and I'm re-inspired again about why they want to do this work. So I really actually invite you all to also put in the chat why this work for you. Why are you interested in the solidarity economy? Why are you working in this? What makes you maybe want to buy from co-ops? Like what's exciting to you or why the solidarity economy for you? So I really encourage folks to be in the chat with one another as well. So our hope at the end of the apprentice program, at the end of the year, is that these 5 amazing leaders will be ready and excited to work with other cooperatives that are in formation, work with folks who want to convert their business, and maybe even participate in the lending. And we'll see what happens over the next 8 months or so. So I want to name and just give some credit here. We are using an ecosystem framework that comes from the folks at Project Equity and the Democracy at Work Institute. That'll get dropped in the chat for you now. The actual whole report, if you're interested in reading it, or if you're not from the DMV and want to engage. It also has case studies of the ecosystems in San Francisco, in Madison, near Asheville, North Carolina, and New York City to give you some real life examples. But we're also going to do that for the DMV. And to me, the key question here is like, what are the key elements of an ecosystem that supports the growth of co-ops and the co-op specific ability to create family sustaining jobs and assets for low wage workers or folks who have been marginalized or excluded intentionally from the traditional economy. And so as the slide says, all ecosystems have key elements that either interact with each other to support or inhibit the growth of worker cooperatives. And I think the mistake that we can make is to say that, oh, to exceptionalize the ecosystem that's in the Bay or exceptionalize the ecosystem that's in New York, and to say we could never build that here. Whether it's because we think our city, there's been too much development, or we just think it's going to fall out of the sky. Right. And what this did, at least for our thinking, is to say, actually, there are legitimate pieces that we can look at, that we can build, that we can put energy into together. So I'm really excited to get to share this framework because it definitely helped and shaped my thinking as well. So we're going to look at the building blocks. Just go to the next slide. So essentially, there are 4 categories of building blocks. And building blocks are exactly what they say, the kind of foundational pieces, the essential pieces to our ecosystem. If we want to see worker cooperatives, we have to have these. And they fall into 4 buckets: skills and capacity, financing, technical assistance, and cooperative developers. And there are specifics under each of those. So if we start with skills and capacity, this is really training that's available to potential worker owners and to folks that are currently worker owners in cooperatives? Is there training on their core job skills, on the governance skills, on the how to run a business together, how to negotiate conflict together? Is training available to support potential and current worker owners and build their capacity to grow and govern their own businesses? Financing. Do we have, and this is on a range of grant financing to lending capital, to say, is there money available to cooperatives to get started, to sustain and grow their membership, and also to expand their businesses? The third bucket is technical assistance. And technical assistance includes all of the service providers that traditional businesses have access to that oftentimes don't exist for cooperatives. So that's looking at lawyers, accountants are two of the most highly sought after technical assistance providers, but that also includes bookkeepers and others. And then the fourth is co-op developers. So co-op developers that have kind of business acumen and that are thinking about the growth of cooperatives and the growth of the ecosystem. And you all already heard us talk about, we really felt that that building block was had not been invested enough in our ecosystem, and that's where the apprentice program came in. So, and we're going to get a chance together, just pushing forward again, to look at this and say, what do we have and what do we need together? We're going to get to do that. And so I want to pass to BCI's Legal and Technical Assistance Director, Jeff, to get to tell one of our building block stories to y'all. And I look forward to hearing from you all as we get back to that piece. So I'll pass the mic to Jeff.
Hang with us one moment here. Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm excited to give a little story share about technical assistance, specifically legal assistance. So I'm going to take us on a journey supporting a project, Baldwin House. I think many people probably have heard of the project in DC. It's been a project to support tenants to exercise TOPA in DC, the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act. Tenants were going to be displaced by their landlord who were seeking to sell their building. And the tenants came together, rose up with lots of community support, and were actually able to purchase the property and are in the process of building a housing cooperative. So I want to take us on a little bit of a journey here. At the outset, I just want to say it's really hard for lots of grassroots solidarity economy projects and cooperatives in DC to access the legal support that they need. So one main barrier is there aren't so many attorneys who know the details of transactional business law for cooperatives. Cost is another huge barrier. So finding legal support that is not cost prohibitive. And then a third really, really big barrier is just like cultural competency, especially in movement spaces where we're trying to build leadership of poor and working class people of color. So these themes will sort of like reverberate throughout the story and why it's so important to invest in like grounded technical assistance and legal support, and why it's so important that we're around at BCI to be able to offer this. So starting with Baldwin House, the project began, I think, in late 2021. So it's in its third year. So that's another big piece that I want to lift up. These projects take a very long time to build. A lot of projects are very vulnerable in the beginning phases. Like if certain core support isn't available, projects can fall apart at the start. So I want to start there with Baldwin House. They built a group of leaders and tenants who really wanted to do the project. The first piece here is you need to come together as tenants to exercise your TOPA rights and say you want to buy the building and then negotiate with the seller of the building. So a place where I and BCI first leaned in was negotiating a contract. The way TOPA works in DC is there's a third-party buyer who can put in an offer to buy a property, and then tenants have the opportunity to match that bid to buy a property and basically buy the property at that price. The project was really vulnerable in the early stages because they needed to connect with technical assistance support to help negotiate a contract with a seller that matches what a third party is offering. That can be a really stressful, hard thing. So it was really important that we were connected on the ground with people to be able to step in there. So the way TOPA works, you have about a month, 2 months to exercise your TOPA rights, and then you have 3 more months to negotiate the contract with the seller. So this was a huge time crunch where we really leaned in and connected pretty immediately to provide in-depth contract negotiation support for the project. The project was able to essentially satisfy the seller and prove to them that the group was able to seek financing in good faith and actually negotiate a similar contract to the initial bid. So that was a first huge hurdle that we overcame. And then moving into a very specific piece of technical assistance that we provided later in the process, the group was able to negotiate with the seller and say like, hey, we can actually enter into a contract to buy the property like the initial offer from the third party. But then the next piece is the group needs to raise the funds. So Baldwin House negotiated a contract and sort of like earned the right to purchase the property at a $4.5 million purchase price. So in DC, TOPA is a really powerful tool. It gives tenants the opportunity to buy the property where they live if their landlord is going to sell, but it does not give tenants the opportunity to buy a property at an affordable rate. It gives tenants the opportunity to buy a property at market rate, which is what is displacing people, what's gentrifying the city. So there was this huge affordability gap, the gap between the market rate, where the tenants were able to negotiate with the seller and force the former landlord to sell to them at that price. There's a gap between that market rate price and the actual price that the tenants can afford, that like affordable mortgage rates for the housing co-op members, what that finances. A huge challenge that the project faced when seeking financing is there's lots of affordable housing finance, like banks that will finance affordable housing projects in the city. But when the affordable housing finance organizations are underwriting the loan, they're looking at this affordability piece. If you tell them, like Baldwin House did, that we want to create an affordable limited equity co-op, they're crunching the numbers and they're saying, great, if you want the tenant owners to pay affordable prices, how much money is that actually going to be every month so that you can repay us for our loan? So Baldwin House was able to connect with banks that were willing to lend well below the $4.5 million purchase price. And Baldwin House was on had a time crunch. Under TOPA, you have basically a year after you agree to the contract to actually complete the sale. So get all of your financing in order and actually be able to purchase the property. If you don't, you're right. Your right to purchase the property goes away. So we really leaned in and worked with the project on this affordability gap between an actual affordable price and the market price at which the seller was able to do the sale, and came up with a really creative community mortgage program where basically we provided in-depth legal support, helped the project navigate securities law challenges, draft contracts for very specialized specific mortgages from wealthy individuals, from impact investors. And those impact investors basically together, through this very specialized legal support we provided, stitched together the missing piece of the mortgage between the affordable price and the market rate price. And we leaned in and provided that support. So with that whole financing package, that is a big piece of how the project was actually able to move forward and buy the property. So just want to lift up that story. We give all the credit to the organizers on the ground and the tenants to mobilizing this whole project and making it happen. And without a lot of very detailed technical assistance like this on the back end, it's really hard for any solidarity economy project to really survive, let alone like grow and provide, like high quality, low cost housing to people or like family sustaining jobs to people. There's just a huge technical piece on the back end that's needed. So I'm going to end my story share there.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yes, thank you, Jeff. And I want to shout out Jeff a little bit more because Jeff gives low to no cost over 100 hours a year for the past 5 years to co-ops and solidarity economy organizations to help them meet their legal challenges. And there is a challenge of not enough trained lawyers, and Jeff has been doing a lot of work to try to fill that gap. So I personally want to shout him out because it is really specialized. But 100 hours to the ecosystem every year, because that's a gap that we have in our ecosystem, is having lawyers that are accessible, that know how to do this work. And just to say, like, that's the story of one co-op, of one housing cooperative, and what's possible when you have excellent TA providers, but also thinking about the other organizations and the other worker co-ops that have received that kind of technical assistance. So I'd like to open us back to the slides and open back up to slide 7 to be talking about the accelerator elements. So to refresh, we talked about building block elements, right? Training and financing and cooperative developers. So then those are the building blocks. That's the foundation we need for co-ops to exist and thrive in our ecosystem. Then there's accelerator elements. Accelerator elements are elements that we can have in our ecosystem that allow us to go to scale, or that allow groups to grow faster, or allow groups to grow, period. And so these accelerator elements to grow include like business supports, so incubators, industry peer networks, economic development programs, things like policy, tax and business incentives, pro-co-op laws and legislation, advocacy partnerships, and connection to market. And we're going to talk a little bit more about connection to market in a second. But I want to say that for these accelerator elements to work, we need enough co-ops that can exist, that can provide family sustaining jobs, for then those groups to be able to grow and scale. And so I will share about connection to market. So it shares lots of different ways that we've done this. So other cities have said, we're going to look at our hospitals or universities to say, how do we get contracts for cooperatives from those, or the city government? Or other cities have looked at supply chains or community benefits agreements. So I want to share a little bit about what that's looking like in the DMV right now and how we're taking that on. So we're gonna go to the next slide, please. And we're gonna share about our partnership with Community Purchasing Alliance. So one of the things BCI, some of you all were here when BCI, in partnership with Seed Commons National Wealth Building Cooperative, launched the DC Solidarity Economy Loan Fund. I'll just ask for help making sure folks are on mute. And we, in the fall, myself included, in the fall, we launched the DC Solidarity Economy Loan Fund as well. And we have given, which is a building block of financing. And so we've given some small loans to local worker cooperatives. And late last year, we were introduced to Community Purchasing Alliance to be able to start to look at what could happen in terms of connecting CPA with financing from Seed Commons, but also what could be possible in our local ecosystem if we were connecting Community Purchasing Alliance with worker co-ops. So I want to share about what is CPA. So CPA is a purchasing cooperative. So it is a cooperative, meaning its members govern it, but its members are our local institutions, our churches, synagogues, mosques, schools, housing, apartment buildings are the members, the 172 members across our region that are engaging in $30 million of collective purchasing every year. The collective purchasing that they're engaging, some things are national contracts like electric or insurance, but some things are grounded local spending that's happening in our communities, in janitorial, in food service. And the possibilities for that spending is really endless, like composting and landscaping and snow removal and transportation and after school care, right? And CPA is moving currently $13 million locally a year. And over the next 10 years, that's going to grow to over $40 million in local spending. And so we said, what could we do with this partnership? We said, okay, we can talk to your current vendors about converting their businesses to worker ownership. And we can think about incubating cooperatives in some of the industries where you either have purchasing programs or you'd like to create purchasing programs. So Seed Commons and DC Self have just gotten approved a $750,000 loan to Community Purchasing Alliance. We're so excited about this. And we're so looking forward to what's possible with helping them grow their member base, right? And also connecting worker cooperatives to the market in this way. So we're so excited to see like what comes from that over the next few years. If we can just go to the next slide, I just want to give a little bit more of like, what's so exciting about CPA? Obviously this connection to market, but it also means our community institutions save money and have more money to run their programs and do the essential services and meet their mission. Also, they're bringing together schools and apartments and churches and houses of worship to say, what is specific to your kind of institution and the kind of support that you all need, and what are the specific pain points affecting your institution and your community. We also, there's solidarity spending. Where does our money go? What are the kinds of businesses that are growing? And then focusing on kind of access to market for Black and migrant-owned businesses. And this is just a really special opportunity that we have together. So that's one small story of an accelerator element that's in our community. And then we're going to move to the last kind of bucket. So we're talking building blocks, right? The essentials. We're talking about the accelerator elements, what helps us grow, what helps us scale. And then the third category is environmental elements. And this is the things that say, how do we make it legitimate to people? How do we make it popular? How do we make it normal or more common, as some of the apprentices were sharing earlier, to create and make community-run institutions, to have our businesses be cooperatives? And so there are three within that. So having other values-driven businesses, that the more values-driven businesses we have, that provides legitimacy to cooperatives as values-driven businesses. Attitudes and culture is a big one. Cooperative education, the desire and momentum that we get to build together, as well as are people being educated about cooperatives? And how can we integrate cooperative education into, for some of our nonprofits that do business education, or the small business development centers, to say that actually you should be presenting cooperatives which fail at lower rates, right? That provide better training and benefits to their workers, that tend to give workers higher wages, that keep wealth in our community, that these institutions should also be sharing cooperatives as a real option alongside. And just to give one more push on the framework, so we're saying we have the building blocks that we need, the accelerators help us grow, and the environmental is really like the air we breathe, right? How do we make it so that this is a normal part of how we're structuring our economy? But again, we really need those worker co-ops to exist so that the environmental elements can do their jobs. So I'm going to pass the mic to Felix, BCI's organizing director, to share a little bit about, we'll go back one slide, share a little bit about our participatory action research program this summer.
Hi there, everybody. One sec while we juggle the technology.
Gotcha.
Jeff's trying to put the highlight on me. There we go. So we are juggling 4 devices here right now. This is a high mark for us, Jeff. So I'm our organizing director. I'm super excited to see you all today. Also want to say hello to our comrades from Cooperation New Orleans who are going to join us in the summer for participatory action research. So we're going to do a very broad and deep scan of the region, both the co-ops who we are connected with and new ones with whom we're not that already exist out there, or co-ops in the process and in early stages, and also brand new workers who have interest in co-ops, but maybe haven't heard about it before. So what is participatory action research? Why are we going to do it? Those are the 2 questions I want to answer in the next 4 minutes. Well, the research is participatory because the researchers come from the impacted communities themselves, like our Black and Brown and migrant communities that have been systematically and historically shut out of access to capital because of racialized capitalism. And we want the researchers themselves to be of those communities because we believe community members are the experts to come up with solutions to the problems that plague our lives. So when we do this, right, when we conduct participatory action research, it is the people most impacted by the problems that are going to point us towards the solutions. So that's the thing in a little nutshell. Now, you're seeing 5 apprentices here. They're going to be joined by more people, and we are going to have a team of 8 people conduct a regional scan of like the state of the whole ecosystem. Super exciting. This is the beginning of the story that you're going to hear. You're going to get to hear like the whole arc from us later on in the fall when we present our findings. So you might ask, like, why do this? You know, you'd be like, Felix, that's a field of 8 people working 10 hours a week for 2 months to like talk to the region. Well, look, like there's a variety of reasons. Number one, if we're going to grow an ecosystem, we have to ground it in the material conditions of people's lives, not just the material conditions of 10 people's lives or 12 people's lives, but the material conditions of many people's lives, right? And like, you might like say, Felix, we have 50 really smart people on the call. We've already diagnosed the ecosystem, right? We already know, where the gaps are, blah, blah, blah. Let's just make, a policy strategy and like move forward with it. But then we would be acting just like an accelerator. We would just be pouring accelerant and not actually scanning the impacted worker owners, the ones that Bianca talked about in like, who are the people who are the essential building blocks of this and what will they tell us? And then the last thing I want to say with y'all is that, well, there's 2 things. We care about building power, period, end of sentence. We're not a traditional, like none of us are in this because we want to be a traditional economic development institute. Like that's not what we're about. We care about fundamentally changing the rules of the game. If you care about building power, then you need to know that how you're moving forward is broadly and deeply felt by a big swath of people. Broadly meaning a lot of people check the boxes on particular things, a lot. And deeply felt, meaning like people are hot to do it. There's like hot spots of workers that are like, let's go, you know, and there's strategic opportunity. And then the other piece, right? So like this is about power building and movement building and nothing else, right? Like all the ingredients come together, the lending, the TA, the co-op incubation, all of it. So we can create a movement that will have solidarity enclaves like all over this region, and then we'll weave them together to create a solidarity economy. That's a decades long view, right? So the other thing is that I think we really, really believe that emergent strategy is like the strategy for moving forward. It's organic, it's not linear. You have to let an ecosystem tell you where you need to go next, and you have to be willing to be surprised. So it's not like the strategic plan that pops out of like a steering committee's head, right? I will tell you a story and leave it at this. So in the year 2000, and I'm going to date myself here, who was born in 2000 on this call? Raise your hand. Oh my God. So I was a baby-ish organizer in 2000. I graduated from organizing school, and I was running the year before, and I was running Tennessee Citizen Action, and we were getting all kinds of money to run statewide field in Tennessee, because guess who was running for president? Al Gore. Won the popular vote, lost the electoral college, right? So, you know, I was just like really reluctantly, it's just like, well, I am not thrilled, but what can we do? Right? I hear you, Dewan. What can we do? And I was just like, okay, how can this be how can this be a power building strategy? Who do we partner with to move forward? And who popped up in the state? And you know, you have to be like willing to connect organically with who is there and present to like, what's your main power building strategy? Was the Tennessee State NAACP. And they had been desperately wanting to run some legislation around reenfranchisement and to like really reform how the state restored the rights of formerly incarcerated people. They didn't have a list. And at the same time, as we were out there in the field with like my 20 organizers, we were hearing over and over again, I actually can't register to vote. And we refused from the very beginning that we were not going to not talk to people who could not register to vote. They were going to get to take a next step. And they signed a petition to want to get to work on their voting rights with all of their information. And what then happened out of that was that we didn't build a big statewide electoral machine. We partnered with the NAACP. We gave them a hot list. It came out of the field of a lot of organizers, and it was new information who were saying, like, there is a there. We have hundreds of people signed up to say they want to work on this. So we didn't ditch all of our plans, but we certainly centered that in moving forward. And that's what an emergent strategy around organizing is going to tell you. And that's why you do need to scale if you do have the ambition of wanting to do regional solidarity economy. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Felix. So I think the thing I want to point out about what Felix said is that kind of rules of organizing would say, like, you will always misidentify the problem if you don't listen to people. And that folks who are farther away because of education or privilege or race or class, farther away from the issue, will often misidentify the problem. And so Felix naming, we have to listen to workers, is like a really key piece. And then Bridget, I want to make sure I'm pronouncing it properly, but Bridget put in the chat about how will key initiatives like the PAR research program include longtime low-income Black DC residents, especially east of the river. And I think that's so important because we can't deny the reality of the location that we're in. And if you're not from the DMV, your location looks different around what are the divides and what are the historical like exclusions and historical divestments and historical extractions from communities. And so I will let Felix talk to you, but I know that part of PAR is letting our like communities that we've been working with and the cooperatives that we've been working with, that many of those projects are east of the river, as well as our apprentices, to kind of help build who are we listening to and who are the institutions that are helping us build that listening. So I want to let Felix, who is really the architect of this program, maybe spend a minute really sharing like how you're going to make sure like who gets centered in that listening.
Okay. Hey, thanks so much for asking that question.
Can I just add to that? This is Brisha. Yeah, thank you so much for bringing this up, and would love to, have more conversation about it even afterwards. But I was just curious about who is doing the participatory research and what chances there are, or what's already being done, to have some of those folks who are gathering the information and doing the listening include Black residents who've been on the short end of the stick. Thanks.
Yep. So thanks for asking. You see the researchers here on the call, and they have broad and deep networks inside their own communities, but will be reaching regionally, both institutionally and with individuals. We'll be bringing on 3 more folks to be part of the regional listening team. We've made a commitment to have the vast majority of those conversations be with Black moms. This is also a regional project, so we're also partnering with African communities together to work with primarily Ethiopian African migrants, but others in DC and in the close suburbs, and also Muslims for Just Futures, who will also be interviewing migrant Muslims, brown and Black Muslims, to add to that whole pot. So it's going to be a really, really like deep dive. And then I would say another group that we want to talk with in particular in a really intentional way. And I do want to like say, if we're not intentional about it, like the people that you will talk to will be the people that it's easiest for them to have conversations, right? So we want to set up the conditions so that we are talking to the people who we really want to get at what their lived experience is like. So another one of the groups that we're going to work with is the National Domestic Workers Alliance, that has a real relational way in with lots and lots of Black and brown domestic workers in the region, from having worked on domestic workers' bills of rights in DC and in Virginia in particular. And we know from hearing from a lot of people that like domestic work, also like you can see if you look at workforce development trends, but the domestic work is some of the most like predominantly Black and migrant femme dominated industries in the entire country, but it is some of the very lowest paid work, and it's care work, period, end of sentence. And it's some of the most strategic work sites to organize. So we're going to have a special like focus on talking with domestic workers. I would also just welcome you to email me if you have ideas, because I really want to hear about what that looks like. And we're also recruiting an advisory board to help us like frame up the whole research project. So if you're interested in this and being part of the advisory board, or you have a researcher to recommend, please email me. And we're going to drop that in the chat now.
And really want to highlight their ask. We are looking for people to help advise that project. So if you are interested in collaborating, please. So I want to shift us actually towards the part where you all get to share. What do you know? What do we have and what do we need? So what do you know from the lived experience of your communities, your neighborhoods? So we're going to actually now open up the slides for you all to get to participate with us. And so what we have is, for every sort of category, remember these building block elements, the accelerator elements, and the larger elements, the environmental elements, we have where it says what we have and what we need. So we're gonna throw on some music and work in this together. All right, folks, I want to welcome us all back. And I want to ask you all, what do you see? What do you notice? What are you curious about as we are looking at these different aspects of our ecosystem? Maybe let's chat building blocks first. What do you notice or see about our building blocks? So I want to point out what Callie just wrote in the chat, and they said that want to say that I'm so used to feeling like there isn't enough that we have, but that this list is really expansive for a 5 to 10 minute break. So a thing that I see about our ecosystem is there's a lot of financing resources. A thing that I also see is that there's lots of need for bookkeepers and guidance for feasibility studies and lawyers and conflict. And so I wonder, who do we need to get connected to in order to build some of that up a little bit more? So that's my wondering of where do we find values aligned bookkeepers and other lawyers who want to get trained on cooperatives? Does anyone else want to offer something they see or notice or wonder from the building blocks?
So Kelly voiced what I was feeling like when I'm by myself. I'm thinking, oh my God, what do I need? What do I already have? But then when we look at what we have, so many people, I'm assuming, so many people supplied information that it's like, all right, so we know what we have. But again, this feels like we're siloing. So maybe everybody doesn't know all that we have. And this is a great way to pull it all together. And then doing what we need. Yeah, this is saying again everything that I say in smaller meetings. I did have a question on the lawyer piece though. And even though I wrote lawyers with organizing expertise, I wonder when we have lawyers in the place writing bylaws for co-ops or creating the organizational framework for the co-op, does that take it away from what the co-op should be and letting the community drive it?
I am not a lawyer, so I am going to see if Jeff would like to take that question.
Would love to. So, I mean, I think everything is needed. I think like the grassroots leadership, 100% is the most important thing. And we need the technical expertise to support, and we need it on the back end, but it needs to exist in a way that like builds the leadership of people on the ground, not that eclipses it. So I think it's all really important. And when I talk about like culturally competent legal services, that's especially like in movement spaces and in movement spaces where we're trying to build leadership of poor and working class people of color. That's really what I'm talking about. It's like attorneys and anybody with technical skills coming in and not being like, hey, I am the expert here, but realizing that like the experts here are the grassroots, the people on the ground building their own project, building a project in their community that serves their community in some kind of way. And all of the technical expertise is there to like invest in and further develop that leadership.
Thank
But that's a
you.
great question. Thank you very much.
Can I speak to what Dewan had shared too?
Sure, Damien.
Really appreciate you, Dewan. Like Jeff has said, Dewan, as a key stakeholder, a leader in our community, bringing forth movement work like this, such to the question, a lawyer or organizing frameworks for communities is very important for our communities to learn the structural components of building that framework. So, like cooperative developers, like yourself, and expertise like Jeff in legal aspects, having them to help assist facilitation for our community stakeholders and worker owners or consumer cooperative members, giving them the tools to be able to build that framework themselves is critical. But learning other systems are very important. That's why, yeah, I just wanted to speak to the question that Dewana says.
Thanks, Damien.
Oh yeah, knowledge is power. So we need to be like doing popular education for the grassroots and like really, really spreading knowledge democracy. So just wanted to jump in with that piece and back to you, Bianca.
No, I love it. I love it. And I know we have some excellent lawyers in our ecosystem that really are putting themselves in service of projects and also I think what Damien is saying, that combo of like local expertise with like some of the technical expertise allows people to feel confident in taking on those aspects of their business. And I see a hand from Amber.
Hi, I was just, it's kind of in response to the last question, but trying to figure out how to like strike the balance between making sure that what the community wants is centered and making sure that we're leaning on expertise from people with experience because like for example, here's one of the things that we're looking at with the co-op that I'm a part of is what is the best legal structure for us to move forward and looking at, you know, not just trying to incorporate the cooperative principles into how we operate, but also what's going to allow us to get funding, what's going to allow us to do the type of work that we want to do, what's going to allow us to operate in different states where we want to operate that don't necessarily have an LCA. So just trying to think through like some of these more technical things that we'll have to like run into, whether it's from a formation perspective or once we're operating and having to like file taxes or go after funding. Like how do we make sure that we strike the right balance and get the information we need at the right points so we're not having to like have so many unnecessary starts and stops along the way.
So I think this is a great question, and I actually think impacts a lot of worker cooperatives where folks feel like how do we incorporate is the place where they start because that's what makes it feel like it's valid or legitimate in the eyes of city government or things like that. But actually you're asking 100% the right questions of like how do you want to make money? What are the things that you want to do? What are the activities and how do you what do you all want to do and how do you want to bring in money, and those deciding your structure. And those decisions the group can really decide. And then it's the bringing in the lawyer to say, okay, to do what we want to do, what structure makes the most sense? And we've been chatting a lot about that with our apprentices around our job as developers being a big piece of developing member capacity. But I want to see if Jeff has anything to add. I feel like I've been in that meeting of like, what do you want to do and how do you want to make money being the starting place, as opposed to like, how do we want to incorporate officially being the starting place?
I mean, I don't have much to add other like what Eric is writing in the chat. Really just want to lift up that as an attorney, I think my role is not to come into a group and be like, hey, like, this is the structure you need. It's really to ask the questions of the group. Like, what do you need in the ways that you articulate it? Like, what are your goals? And then attorneys can come in and support you to find the structure that helps you do that. So there isn't like magical legal knowledge that will just like solve everything. It's more like we need a service from the group. Like, what do you need? And then just find the creative legal path to help you get that.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Amber. I think it's really instructive for lots of folks. And I see folks in the chat sharing lots of resources around decision making, around consensus and sociocracy and integrative consent, lots of resources around how do we build our capacity around democratic decision making and democratic governance together.
One of our partners, you know, we mentioned Community Purchasing Alliance, a really awesome, like long-term partner in solidarity ecosystem building here is B.A. Cockburn over at Community Purchasing Alliance, who just recently did a really deep dive on sociocracy with Sociocracy for All. And we'll probably also be offering a training at Community Wealth Builders. It's just going to be like a really great way to learn more and more. And, you know, like there's always more to learn about how you practice sociocracy too. Like you're never done figuring that out. But BA is going to bring that great resource and others to like our great big umbrella space. And if you want to learn more about Community Wealth Builders, you can also like touch base with Bianca or I, or many people on this chat, frankly, around particularly the sociocracy question and training around that.
Mm-hmm. So here's what I would love. So we're coming up on our time to close out. And so I want to share some next steps that we have and also a suggestion. I think we are figuring out how do we have these sort of calls and training or skill sharing spaces more regularly. So if folks want to drop in the chat, what are things I think decision making has come up? What are some things folks would like training or skill shares or webinars or resource sharing around? That would be a helpful thing for to drop in the chat so that can shape our next public offering. We want to make sure that what we're talking about is a contribution to this ecosystem that we're a part of. And we'll just pull up the last slide. I want to invite you all to follow us on socials. That's the easiest way to keep in touch and find out what sorts of trainings or opportunities that are available. And I just really want to thank you all so much for being here with us today. We are dreaming into existence something that doesn't yet exist in its entirety. And we are building it and cultivating it and strengthening it. And I'm really excited to be in relationship with y'all.